going to quickly bring in Dr. Tara Kartha into this conversation. She was director at National Security Council Secretariat, knows a lot about 26/11 while the terror attack was happening and about these terrorists, and also Professor Brahma Chelani, former advisor to India's National Security Council, joining me on this broadcast. Dr. Tara Kartha, a sense of relief today that finally this terrorist is being brought back to India, has been brought back to India to face trial. What do we hope to get from him right now on 26/11 and future terror attacks that Lashkar had planned, madam?
No, but there is a sense of relief, definitely, but there is also a sense, definitely apprehension, because there's going to be a lot of people who are trying to get this guy out of the way. I mean, there's no two ways. I hope there's no I hope this will never happen, but some sort of hostage taking, trying to get this guy out of prison, that is the kind of scenario that I would look forward. In terms of what do we expect from him, he had, in fact, details of Headley's visits, which were even denied to Headley's handlers. Headley was doing things without which they didn't know, but Rana knew. That was the kind of proximity he had with Rana. You know, for example, I mean, on a personal note, he had another wife. Headley took another wife. These guys didn't know, but the Rana did. Rana met his family when he went back to Chicago. This guy was extremely close to him. So all those conversations, money was sent through Rana to Headley. That's going to be another charge. Forgery, another charge, because he forged the papers to the RBI, Reserve Bank of India, to set up the immigration center. So all that is going to come out, and within that are going to be the smaller dots, which you will have to connect. So that
the
is
smaller dots. And let's for a moment focus on this. Professor Chelani, a man of Pakistani origin, he may have a Canadian passport, or, Dawood Gilani or David Coleman Headley may have had an American passport. But were Indians, including officers in our Ministry of External Affairs, so naive that they gave them multiple entry visas to India? Were Indians so naive that they were able to set shop in India, first world immigration, travel across the length and breadth of our country, recruit local people and carry out terror attacks in India, and we were all sleeping? Or were people conniving with them?
India has a very porous system, and the facts that you're mentioning in this case, those facts are there in other cases too. We've seen how saboteurs, terrorists, and even foreign intelligence officers are able to penetrate into the length and breadth of India, into our system. And yet we don't learn from this porousness how we can actually fix the system, how we can ensure that our system functions in a more efficient manner. But I think Rana's extradition to India, besides, it's definitely a welcome step, should actually encourage the Indian government now to seek the extradition of David Coleman Headley, because David Coleman Headley is a bigger plotter in the Mumbai terror attacks than even Rana. And it doesn't make any sense for the US to continue to deny India's extradition request in relation to Headley, especially now that there's a more India-friendly administration in Washington. The Trump administration is pretty tough on terrorism and on terrorists. And I think this is a good time for India to press its case to the US to extradite David Coleman Headley. We should not forget that in 2013, Headley was actually sentenced by a US court to 35 years in prison for his role in the Mumbai terrorist attacks.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. David Coleman Headley was roaming around the length and breadth of this country, and he's been involved in the killing of 6 American nationals too during 26/11. But Dr. Tara Kartha, I want to understand our system. Yes, we need to find out who's the enemy across in Pakistan, who these guys were conniving with. But do we also have the fifth column in our own country who were aiding and abetting these elements? In your, appreciation, how could he set shop in India? How was he able to send money? How was David Coleman Headley able to access that money, travel across our country, wine and dine with the well-heeled in Mumbai, and God forbid other cities in India?
In this regard to what Brahma said, I'd like to also add that the US's own 9/11 was a complete, I mean, it came as a complete shock, though there were analysts within the intelligence community who said, look, these guys are doing this. How about, nobody listened to them. So it's also a question of how you put everything together within an institution. But on the question of support in India, I think the fact that you brought this up is very important. There may have been unwitting or the definite support to this guy on other counts, because if you look at any successful terrorist attack there across the world, okay, there are very, very few who didn't get support from within that country. There is somewhere, there is a mole, there is somebody who's providing a prop up. Now, perhaps the ISI was brilliant enough to do this with the guy who has an American passport, and he comes and goes, so nobody notices. It's possible. But the fact is that he flew directly from Pakistan to India. I mean, those are people normally that one looks at. It's not something that we'll have every
I
day.
was
He
always
flew from
told that
Lucknow.
our diplomats and our bureaucrats are very smart. In case they're given some instruction, which is an illegal instruction from either a superior or from the government, they make sure they make a file noting that on the instruction of so-and-so, David Coleman Headley is being permitted to come to India, or so-and-so facilities are being extended to him. In case those files are opened, Dr. Tara Kartha, will some of that information filter out today? Because perhaps it didn't earlier, but now with Tahawwur Rana's interrogation, the sleeper cells, the connivers in India, that ecosystem, will some of those elements, are they likely to be exposed?
Certainly. If it's on file, I mean, bureaucrats, as by and large, are apolitical, right? They don't have the slightest desire to get their pensions revoked. So those things are going to come into play. But I can assure you one thing. During the entire episode within the National Security Council and our meetings, there was no question at all that this was not a Pakistan episode. I mean, we had no doubts whatsoever, which is why we had that briefing, that intelligence report warning saying that there's going to be an attack. And
And yet there was an attack, and yet we were caught sleeping, and yet perhaps even the top police officers in Mumbai were focusing on this bogey of Hindu terror, and we'll take that on another day though, and instead of focusing on the enemy across the border,